Okay, this is Unit 1A in Math 1030. We're looking at living in the media age, and some of the things we're going to accomplish here is we're going to be looking at an idea of logic, which comes with premises and conclusions. Then we're also going to look at some fallacies, those are kind of the big ideas that we're going to be covering in this lesson. So first, let's just kind of look at and set the stage for where we're headed in this lesson. So today we're living in what we sometimes would call a media age, because we are almost constantly in contact with the media in some way, shape, or form. They can come in printed materials, books, newspapers, magazines, even billboards. However, much more is delivered through the internet, smartphones, televisions, movies, and so much more. But a lot of us rely on these media sources for information, which means they form opinions and beliefs based on these sources. So, what we watch, what we see, has a tendency to influence our beliefs and our opinions on things. Now, unfortunately, much of the information that we see in the media is either inaccurate or possibly partially accurate, but doesn't contain the whole story. Or another thing that's we're really going to touch on is it's biased, and it is designed less to inform us than to convince us of something that may or may not be true. So that's going to be one big idea when we look at this idea of fallacies today. And so it takes a lot of understanding to make sense of the modern media, because of so many different ways that are tried to manipulate views, opinions. So this first unit, we're just going to explore a few tools that can help us navigate through sources intelligently. Okay, these tools will definitely provide us a foundation for critical thinking, quantitative reasoning, that will definitely be focused on throughout the rest of this book and the rest of this course. And so, today, if you're wondering, there's not going to be numbers involved. If you're wondering how does this apply to math, we're just trying to get the brain thinking, to analyze things, to ask, does this make sense? Is this biased? Does this tell the whole story? And so forth. And here's an example of something you can see. You may see in a media post. You may see it's watching the news or on social media, where someone talks about a very delicate situation here or subject, the death penalty. So Ethan comes in and says the death penalty is immoral. Without really, he just states his own opinion, and then Jessica comes in and says, no, it isn't. Ethan replies, yes, it is, and then he makes a suggestion that judges who give the death penalty should be impeached. Now notice these are just spitting out opinions and getting a little defensive. No, it isn't. Yes, it is. And then Jessica makes this jump. He says, you don't even know how the death penalty is decided. So automatically she assumes that Ethan is incompetent. Ethan comes back and says, I know a lot more than you know. And lastly, Jessica says, I can't talk to you. You are, and I'll replace the text version here with an unintelligent human. But notice that this argument, nothing was accomplished. We had a couple of people who were talking about this idea of the death penalty, and they didn't get anywhere. They basically just insulted each other and didn't really create an argument. But there's definitely a better way to argue. And we want to be arguing logically. So we can use skills of logic, and logic is the study of methods and principles of reasoning. Okay, when we argue logically, we may not change a person's position, but at least we get a better chance or possibility to understand each other. Okay, so when we talk about logic, there's this term argument, which refers to a reasoned or thoughtful process Okay, now specifically an argument uses a set of facts or assumptions. These are called your premises. And these premises are used to support the conclusion of your argument. So some of these arguments will provide strong support for their conclusions, but others don't. And an argument that fails to make a compelling case for its conclusion, it may contain some kind of error in its reasoning, and that idea is going to be a fallacy. So, in other words, a fallacy, a fallacious argument, tries to persuade, so I'll highlight this here, tries to persuade in a way that doesn't really make sense when analyzed carefully. So now we're going to look at different types of fallacies and try and identify how they can affect your perception or your opinions. Okay, here are some definitions if you want in this box right here. Just some more concise definitions of fallacy, well, logics, arguments, fallacies. Now we're going to go through common fallacies, and this is going to be a lot of information to take in. All of this can be found in your textbook. Okay, this starts on page 6, and it will be very helpful to, I'm going to briefly go through these. It will be very helpful to review through these ideas, read through them. You can even pause the video and read through these and try and make sense to these fallacies that we're going to be looking at. So the first fallacy that we're going to look at is an appeal to popularity. Okay, so in this one, the example here, it says Ford makes the best pickup trucks in the world. More people drive Ford pickups than any other light truck. Okay, so we've got a premise and a conclusion. So our premise is, or our argument, we could say, is more people drive Ford pickups than any other light truck. And then automatically, in this argument, jump to the conclusion that Ford makes the best pickup trucks in the world. So if we look at this box over here on the right-hand side, this appeal to popularity is basically summed up in the idea that many people believe that P is true, meaning kind of the premise that we're stating. Therefore, since many people believe it, it must be true. It is true. And so that's the idea of appeal to popularity. A lot of people believe it, therefore it's true. Okay, here's another one, false cause. This one is used very frequently. And here's kind of the little scenario for this one. I placed the quartz crystal on my forehead, and in 5 minutes my headache was gone. The crystal made my headache go away. So we have a couple of premises here. We're arguing that they placed the crystal on their forehead. 5 minutes later, the headache was gone. Therefore, the crystal made the headache go away. Hopefully you can see that this argument definitely has a lot of holes. And so when we look over here on the right, basically it says A came before B, meaning put the crystal on our head. That came before the headache going away. Therefore, A caused B, or in other words, we put the crystal on the head. It relieved the headache. Therefore, crystals relieve headaches. Hopefully you can see that that would be a pretty difficult argument to support, pretty generalized. Okay, our third example here, an appeal to ignorance. So we have scientists have not found any concrete evidence of aliens visiting the Earth. Therefore, anyone who claims to have seen a UFO must be hallucinating. Okay, so the premise is there's no proof that aliens have visited the Earth. Therefore, aliens have not visited the Earth. So in this argument, there's no proof of the premise P. There's no proof that it's true. Therefore, it must be false. Okay, so we have nothing to prove that it's true, so it's got to be false. Again, hopefully you can see that there's definitely some holes in that type of argument. Again, that's what we call an appeal to ignorance. And so I bet you can think of many times when that one has been used. A hasty generalization. Okay, we're going to kind of pick up the speed a little bit here. So in this one, we've got 2 cases of childhood leukemia have occurred along the street where the high voltage power lines run. The power lines must be the cause of these illnesses. Okay, so we have in this argument, this fallacy, we have 2 things, A and B, are linked one or a few times. So we see a couple of examples of it. Therefore, one causes the other, or vice versa. So we've got 2 kids who got leukemia on the same street where the high voltage power lines run. Therefore, high voltage power lines cause leukemia. So it's a very hasty generalization with just a couple of examples. Okay, the next one, limited choice. In this argument here, they say you don't support the president, so you are not a patriotic American. Okay, so in a limited choice, when we see that the first thing is false, that means only the second thing must be true. You don't support the president, so you're unpatriotic. You're not a patriot of the country. And again, that just completely limits the scope of other possibilities. You may not support the president for certain reasons, but that doesn't mean you're not patriotic to your country. But in this argument, once you determine, you see the first part, you don't support the president, automatically you determine that you're not patriotic to your country, which again, they totally limit your choices on that. Okay, example 6, an appeal to emotion. Okay, this one is used a ton in ads where they're really going to try and strike that emotion. So for example, in ads of Michelin tires, a picture of a baby is shown with the words, because so much is riding on your tires. So, this one, when they show the picture of the baby sitting in the tire, okay, the premise there, the implied idea is that, you love your baby. That's the assumption. So if you love your baby and your life is riding on your tires, then you should definitely buy these Michelin tires. So what happens in this one is that the premise is associated with a positive emotional response, a love for your baby. Therefore, whatever your conclusion is has got to be true. The baby is protected by the tire. Therefore, Michelin tires are always going to protect your baby, and so forth. So that's 6 examples. I'm going to go ahead and stop this recording. We'll do a part 2. But as we go through fallacies here, again, this is going to take a little bit of time to kind of synthesize all of this information, but hopefully it's helping as we go through. So we'll continue this in part 2.